Chapter 14, Developing the Organizational History and Capability Boilerplate Narrative. In this chapter, obeying the funder's instructions, demonstrating organizational capability and presenting your current programs, presenting validated facts about your target population, understanding the importance of developing collaborative partnerships. Whether your organization is a first-time grant applicant or a veteran proposal writing machine, you must write current and relevant boilerplate information about the organization in the Organization Background History section of the narrative. A boilerplate is information that has minimal changes from year to year. The section of the grant application narrative that houses this information, whether up front, in the middle, or at the end, communicates who the grant applicant organization is, where it's located, and what services and programs it provides. This section also included information on your organization's primary community partners, agencies that support your mission, programs, and services by collaborating with you to strengthen your financial, physical, and program-related assets. How much you write for this section depends on each funder and its specific guidelines, content and page or character limitations, for what and how much it wants to see. In this chapter, you find out how to incorporate your organization's background, programs, and affiliations into compelling introductory paragraphs that introduce the organization to potential funders. These opening sections convince the grant funding decision makers that your organization is financially and operationally capable to receive and manage grant monies. A little trivia and a lot of facts create the kind of reader interest every successful grant writer shoots for. The longer you can keep readers' attention, the better your chances are of getting recommended for a grant award. I included a full-length grant application at www.dummies.com/go/grantwritingfd7e. Be sure to check it out before you write. Adhering to the funder's guidelines. In most cases, the funding source's narrative writing instructions point you in the right direction for what to include in the capability section of the application. Some funders title the section Organizational Background or History. Others label it Grant Applicant Capability or Organizational Capability. Regardless of what the funder calls this section, when introducing your organization, be sure to divide the information into different parts for easy digestion by the grant reviewer. For example, you may include these different parts: background, history and accomplishments, programs and activities, current services, constituency demographics, information about your service population, and community affiliations, local, regional, and state partners. Remember, federal grant application guidelines require extensive, detailed responses, therefore, the writing guidelines are very long as well. Here are some examples of the types of narrative section writing instructions you may see in your application guidelines. Community Foundation example, organization background, provide the history of the organization, its broader purposes, and services to the community. Federal example, U.S. Department of Labor, Veterans Employment and Training Service Grant Program, organizational capability and experience. You must describe in your application your organization's ability to manage the operational, administrative, programmatic, and financial reporting requirements specified within this funding announcement. You must describe key staff skills, experience, history, knowledge, qualifications, capabilities, and office locations, and provide an organizational chart. You must also address your capacity for timely implementation of the program, programmatic reporting, and participant tracking. You must fully describe how the proposed program can all outlast the federal funding being provided under this grant. You must describe in your application a diverse funding base or illustrate an organizational strategic plan that will lead to the attainment of financial resources beyond those secured through the grant. If you have previously operated a Veterans Employment and Training Program, then you must include the performance outcomes from your last, or most recent, if the grant is active, fourth quarter Technical Performance Report, TPR, and the planned goals for that grant. If you lack prior experience with implementing these types of grants, you are required to provide program outcomes from other similar programs you have operated. You must describe specific outcomes previously achieved against set targets within these related programs, such as number of enrollments, number of participants who entered employment, cost per placement into employment, benefits secured, and coalitions. For new grantees that may not have past experience operating an employment and training program, it is important to have detailed information on the specific ability to manage these types of programs. Creating organizational capabilities as a grant applicant. When writing the organizational capability section of your application, you need to give the grant reader just enough information about your organization's experience and accomplishments to pique their interest and keep them reading word for word. Remember that you're just introducing yourself. This isn't the place to discuss the money you need or the problems you have. In a federal grant application, you'll lose peer review points if you don't respond to every mandatory requirement for each section of the narrative and budget. Chapter 11 explains the federal peer review process and how to write to the requirements for what peer reviewers want to read. Although you're shooting for clarity and precision, in order to get your grant application funded, you must be able to make the mundane interesting to the grant reader. Your narrative must be magnetizing to all who read it, from your community partners to potential funders. After years of experimenting, I'm thoroughly convinced that telling and selling your organization's story is critical when funders are at the point of making a decision to fund or not to fund. You must write to hit them where their hearts and their minds are. The first two sections that follow describe how to write the organizational capability section for private sector funders. The last section explains how to write the same section for public sector funders, stating the history, mission, values, and geographic logistics. The grant reader wants to see the following in the first few sentences: the full legal name of your organization, the year the organization was founded, by whom, and for what purpose. If you don't know the appropriate answers, ask a long-time employee or board member. Sometimes, you can also find the history of an organization in its annual report or in an anniversary issue of its newsletter. Keep researching and asking others until you strike gold. The location of the organization's headquarters and any other operating sites, name, city, county, state. The mission statement, who the grant applicant organization is now, and the vision statement, what the organization will become. In the example that follows, I make the text inviting by putting a face on the organization's history. See Chapter 12 for pointers on resuscitating your writing. The Grant Writing Training Foundation was founded in 2007 by Dr. Beverly A. Browning in Buckeye, Maricopa County, Arizona. Dr. Browning's vision for this 501(c)(3) foundation emerged when she was managing a for-profit consulting business that wanted to offer more affordable training for non-profits and units of government. Her vision unfolded in the mission statement of the foundation: provide affordable and relevant training in grant seeking, proposal writing, and non-profit and financial capacity building. The foundation's vision is to leave a legacy of teaching and reaching those who desire to elevate their proposal writing skills. Dr. Browning has over 45 years of experience in the non-profit sector. The most important achievements for the Grant Writing Training Foundation include the following: donated 20% or more of annual proceeds to training site hosts and other charitable causes. Provided new computers or grant-related textbooks at venues to at least one of the attendees annually since 2007. Facilitated low-cost training to over 1,000 non-profit site hosts since its founding. Presenting key milestones in organizational development. Complete the organizational capability section by writing about important milestones in the organization's history that relate to the activities covered in the grant application. Write a brief introductory paragraph before you begin listing the milestones. Even though your organization may have dozens of milestones, don't include every last miscellaneous award and achievement. If you're seeking grant funds for a new after-school program, for example, don't mention unrelated accomplishments, such as the school football team's winning record or the cabinet full of medals from the swim team. Taking the grant reader down a dead-end road with unrelated information is a fatal flaw, and it can result in your application not being read or funded. Use bulleted, abbreviated statements to share the top milestones. And use a casual voice to make the list more inviting. Your organization's milestones narrative may look something like this. The Grant Writing Training Foundation currently offers a full menu of grant-related and small business capacity-building training programs to non-profits throughout the United States, including foundations, community service organizations, colleges and universities, and government agencies. Current training programs include but are not limited to: Grant Writing Bootcamp, 2007 to current. 400 sessions. Grant Writing Bootcamp Express, 2010 to current. 150 sessions. Nonprofit Board of Directors Bootcamp, 2012 to current. 150 sessions. Small Biz Bootcamp, 2012 to current. 50 sessions. When writing the Organizational Capabilities section, I like to use customized bullets to draw attention to the grant applicant's attributes. For example, you can use a $sign or a red heart to point to the Grant Writing Training Foundation's accomplishments if your organization is new, just starting up. List the background of the founders and your governing board members along with the planned milestones from your strategic plan. Chapter 2 gives you more information on the strategic plan. Shifting gears for government grants. Strong, emotional writing works best with foundation and corporate grant applications, but you need to adopt a different writing style for government applications. When you describe your organization's history in a government grant application, follow these tips to rack up the review points. See chapters 10 and 11 for more on review points. Use a compelling but concise writing style. Remember to only write what's asked for, no more, no less. Stick with the cold, hard facts. Don't write the history and accomplishment section in the first person, using pronouns such as I, our, and my. Instead, use the third-person writing approach. When you write in third person, you're writing as if you're on the outside of the grant applicant organization and looking in with a third-party perspective. Your reference to your organization must be from a formal and straightforward approach. Here are 2 examples that allow you to compare first and third-person writing styles. First person, our organization was founded in 2007 and is located in Arizona's Sonoran Desert, Phoenix MSA, Arizona. Last year, we provided more than 100 capacity-building training programs for nonprofits throughout the world. Third person, the Grant Writing Training Foundation, founded in 2007, is located in Goodyear, Maricopa County, Arizona. Last year, its founder and director provided over 100 virtual training programs for nonprofit organizations and goes throughout the United States, Canada, and Europe. Sorting out relevant programs and activities. Use the program section of your opening narrative to write about the day-to-day happenings at your organization. Describe the programs that you currently provide to your constituency, also called the target population, not what you plan to provide when your grant request is funded. You can read more about target populations in the next section. If you work for a smaller organization, you probably have only 1 or 2 programs. However, keep in mind that having fewer programs doesn't decrease your chances of winning a grant award. Grants are available for organizations of all sizes and shapes. Remember, it's all in the writing in the program section. The grant reader is looking for you to briefly give the name of the program and state how long it has existed. Focus on long-lasting and successful programs. Tell whom the program serves: youth, adults, women, seniors, veterans, people with physical or cognitive disabilities, or whomever. Describe how the target population benefits from the program. Following is a comprehensive list of current programs for a human services nonprofit organization. This is taken from an actual grant application that was funded by a federal agency: Behavioral Health Outreach Program, Family Violence Services, Family Support Services, Therapeutic Visitation Services, Children currently in state custody, Children transitioning home from foster care and their families, Youth with juvenile court involvement, Parents who are seeking reunification with their children, Parents in need of parenting assessment, Parent education, and marriage and or couples, Counseling, Children and parents in need of signs of abuse education or anger management conflict resolution skills, Sex abuse education, Child abuse education, Youth needing positive role models through mentoring services, Mid-Cumberland Relative Caregiver Program, Grandparents and relatives caring for minor children, Children and teen social skills groups, Youth needing positive role models through mentoring services, Parenting education groups, Community Prevention Initiative Program, Youth needing positive role models through mentoring services, Youth with juvenile court involvement, Children and teen social skills groups, Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth, Social skills groups for high-risk youth, Lottery for education and after-school programs, Middle school students in need of academic enrichment and tutoring 21st Century Community Learning Center Program, Adult and Youth Therapeutic Groups. Metro Government of Nashville Juvenile Court Program, high-risk youth with juvenile court involvement. Therapeutic groups for youth suspected of alcohol, drug, and tobacco use. Don't make the mistake of pulling the language for this section from a previously written grant, such as last year's failed attempt. Always use fresh, up-to-date programs and activities information. Grant readers are very intuitive and can pick up on outdated, out-of-place information. Presenting and validating your target population for services. The target population section is the place to write about the people you serve. If you're serving certain organizations, you write about the organizations. If you're writing a grant for an animal shelter, you write about the animals. Give just enough detail to aid the reader in understanding whom your operating dollars benefit: community members who are poor, adults who are unemployed, youth who have dropped out of high school, people who are homeless, or those with a terminal illness, for instance. To make this section as accurate as possible, do your homework. Pull old evaluation reports from previously funded grants and review reports given to your board members. Both types of documents should detail exactly who benefits from your organization's services in the target population section. The grant reader wants to see characteristics of your target population: age range, gender, ethnicity, education level, and income level. Clearly define your target population. You must convey to funders that you're serving a constituency that falls within their funding parameters. Also, be sure to cite the source of your demographics. Numbers served by each program. Make a table that covers the past 5 years. Changes in the target population that may relate to why you're asking for grant funds. When you write the target population section, use words describing the population that tell your story with accuracy and emotion. Chapter 12 has tips on how to resuscitate your writing to win grants. In the following example from a federal Mentoring Children of Prisoners grant application, I introduce the grant reviewer to a faith-based non-profit organization serving in a city residence. Because I want the reader to understand the importance of the funding request, I use italics to make phrases stick in the reviewer's mind. Usually, I advise grant writers to refrain from putting any language from the statement of need in the section of the proposal narrative that contains a description of the organization. However, I break this rule when I'm writing about projects serving children, specifically, a target population under the age of 18. For children's services programs, I drop hints of need every chance I can. This strategy helps reach out and touch the hearts of the grant readers, whether foundation, corporate, state, or federal. Conditions and characteristics of youth and families affected, according to a 2020 needs assessment conducted by Prison Families of New York, Incorporated. Children of prisoners blame themselves for their parents' incarceration. 1 in 5 children witnessed their mother's arrests. Are embarrassed about their peers finding out about their parents' incarceration. Have difficulty dealing with the loss of a parent to the prison system. Fail to address their emotional hurt and often act out. Lack anyone who encourages them to achieve life success. Are deeply negatively impacted by the separation, demonstrated in lower self-esteem and loss of personal and cultural identity. Are in critical need of an adult mentor who can help them express their feelings about the incarcerated parent. Almost 58% of mothers and almost 59% of fathers in state prisons report never having a visit with their children since they entered prison. African American children are 7.5 times more likely to have a parent in prison than white children. Latino children are 2.5 times more likely than white children to have an incarcerated parent. The incarceration of a primary caretaker is traumatic and disruptive for children. Children of incarcerated mothers often move at least once and live with at least 2 different caretakers while their mothers are in prison. When a parent is incarcerated, children may face dramatically changed family conditions, particularly if the incarcerated parent was the sole or primary caregiver, including high-stakes partners to boost your credibility. Your grant guidelines may call for your partnership information to appear at the beginning of the narrative, before the history and accomplishments. However, the partnerships can just as easily be placed after the statement of needs or as an attachment. Read your grant application directions carefully before you start writing. The great thing about modern technology, however, is that little tool called cut and pastes. You can move anything anywhere after it's written. If your application guidelines require a separate partnership section, You can and should still have a 1 or 2 line boilerplate about how many partners your organization has in the organizational capacity narrative section. In the partnership section of your organization description and narrative, write about your organization's local, regional, and national collaborative partnerships. What organizations do you team with to provide your program's services? What organizations have asked you to write letters of commitment for their grant applications? What groups have historically supported you? If you find that this section of your narrative is a bit slim, Chapter 10 gives you more information about establishing community partners to give your grant application the competitive edge. Partners are like friends, you get to know them inside and out, and you complement each other in the delivery of like or unlike services. For example, say you operate a group home for adults with cognitive and physical disabilities. In that case, you need to depend on the GetM their transportation service to take your clients to and from medical appointments. When writing about your partnerships, list the partner's full name and its role in relation to your organization. Whether you're writing a corporate or foundation funding request or a government funding request, the information you provide in your narrative on partnerships is the same, who and where the partner is and what role the partner plays. As you write about your partnerships, don't include an organization that you're considering partnering with without first talking to a representative about what you're doing and asking permission to include the organization in your proposal. It doesn't reflect well on you if the funder calls your partner and that organization has no clue who you are and no knowledge of a partnership. When reviewing the partnership section of your funding application, the grant reader looks for evidence of collaborative efforts with multiple partners to maximize the use of grant funds by coordinating services to the target population. See the preceding section for the lowdown on target populations. Partners that commit cash to reduce the amount of grant funding you need, known as cash contributors. Partners that contribute personnel, space, equipment, supplies, and other valuable items to reduce the amount of grant funding needed, known as in-kind contributors. Evidence that your partners are committed in writing courtesy of signed Memoranda of Understanding, MOU, and or letters of commitment. In the following example, I briefly introduce our grant applicant's partners and their roles in helping the applicant organization coordinate its services. Note, mention partners who contribute cash simply as cash contributors in your narrative. See Chapter 18 for how to incorporate matching funds from your organization and its partners into the project budget summary and narrative detail. The Northern Arizona Association for the Blind formed the Building Your Vision partnership in 2019. Current cash contributors include Sunrise Village Triathlons, Coconino County Center for the Visually Impaired, and Peak Performance. Each of these partners contributed $5,000 toward general operating expenses. Partners that have contributed in kind, non-cash gifts, include March for More, $10,000 in technical assistance, and SiteRight, $5,000 in donated assistive technology equipment. If you prefer, you can present your partner organizations, their partnership roles, and the values of their contributions in a table rather than a paragraph, as shown in Table 14-1. After all, sprinkling graphics and tables throughout your narrative gives the grant reader a break from reading straight texts. Remember, the grant readers may have to read dozens of grant requests each week. You can give them a much-needed respite from standard sentences and win them over by using a table effectively. When I'm writing a short, 5 pages or less, proposal for corporation or foundation funding sources, I don't create a table to spotlight the grant applicant organization's partnerships unless I have sufficient room on the second page to accommodate the entire table. Remember, you have 4 subsections to squeeze into 5 pages. Revert to using a narrative or a bulleted list to describe your partnerships when a table format puts you over the page limit. The indication of financial support in the Partners section can be broken out into the inclusion of a few sentences or at least one sentence on the history of the organization's fundraising totals and revenue management total. The list of partners may be better positioned in a section on partners in the program narrative itself rather than the history and capability. It's often included in program narrative specifically in a funder's requested information on partners and less so in the history capability section. The most important thing to remember here is to always follow the funder's guidelines when writing your narrative. Wherever the funder asks about the partners, write about them under that specific question.